Michelle Fairley. Catelyn Stark. Mr. Kit Harrington. Mr. David Benioff. Co-creator, Mr. Dan Weiss. Mr. Peter Dinklage. Lena Headey. Mr. George R.R. Martin. Ms. Maisie Williams. And Ms. Sophie Turner. So, George, I'd like to get the evening started with you, and maybe you could tell us, and this is a story you've told a couple times, but I find it really fascinating, about the first time that you met with Dan and Dave, and why you chose them with your baby.
I'd written, I think, 3 books at that point, and each one had done better than the others. At a certain point, as the books were selling well, I started getting interest from Hollywood, from various producers and studios who were initially interested in doing it as a feature film. And I met with some of those people. I had phone conversations with some people. I didn't see how it could be done as a feature film. It was simply too big. But it did get me thinking of how could it possibly be done. And I decided the only way it could be done was with someone like HBO as a series of television series, each book being a season. But of course I didn't have the time to do it, but I did tell this idea to my agent, and I was out here in Hollywood on something, and he told me he had set up a meeting with these guys, Benioff and Weiss, so I met them at the Palm restaurant. I knew a little about their credits beforehand. They were both novelists. I'd read their own books, and we had this lunch at the Palm, which was pretty epic. We got there for lunch, and we started talking, and we continued to talk, and they had the same notion, not to do it as a feature film, but to do it as a television production, and we talked right through lunch. Everybody from lunch left. We were alone in the restaurant. They started resetting all the tables for dinner. Then the dinner crowd started to come in, and we were still talking. And I did, as they say, ask them a few pointed questions to determine whether they'd actually read the books, and they gave me the right answers. So we shook hands, and they took the ball and ran with it. And next thing I knew, we were in business with HBO.
But as I understand the story, he asked you a specific question, and you guys guessed?
He asked us, should I say the question? I guess I can say the question. He asked us, who is Jon Snow's mother? And we discussed this before. We gave an answer, a shocking answer, that George never actually, at that point, he didn't actually say whether or not we were right or wrong, but the smile on his face, I think, was his smile was his tell. We knew we had passed the Wonka test at that point, I think.
And were you guys nervous? I mean, how long had you prepped for this meeting?
Yeah, we were. I mean, we had read thousands of pages, and we got to a certain point. I remember I was midway through Storm of Swords, and I called Dan, and I said, if somehow we could get George to agree to do this, and if we could get HBO to agree to do this, and we got to a 3rd season, we could get to this scene, which he had already read because he's a much faster reader than I am. I just think an audience is going to love it, but that means getting George to say yes and HBO to say yes and getting a pilot picked up and getting it all seemed pretty unlikely, and it all depended on this meeting with George. So we were, I would say, intensely nervous. There's never been anything I've worked on before that I was so excited for the possibility of it, and it was pretty intimidating.
It was just such a singular opportunity. We knew that it was a one-shot deal. It was one series of books like this. There would never be another series of books like this. There was one place that we could make it. There's nowhere else in the world besides HBO where you could make a show like this. And when you want something that badly, yeah, it does make you nervous.
Well, and how quickly from that point forward did you move?
I think we pitched HBO and
March?
Showtime a few weeks after we met with George, yeah.
March of, what was it, 2006?
2006, 7 years ago.
God.
Wow. And as I understand it, you shot the pilot twice. Is that correct? Almost?
Yes, I think 90% of the pilot was reshot.
They cut my cameo.
Yeah, that was
They, I was left on the cutting room floor.
we've still got you somewhere. You're in a file.
Well, George, I just wanted to... Is there a chance for him to come back?
Yes,
Well, we're gonna have
actually
another
this year. I think we've got a Dubrovnik cameo set for George.
No. and this will be in. It won't be cut.
It's going to be in.
No, we'll
Okay.
You'll read for us though, right?
Oh, sure.
George, I'd like to ask a little bit about the just thematically of the series itself. It seems like on the surface, it's a story about power, the acquisition of power, political and military struggle for it. But each character, you know, if you dig a little deeper, it seems to me like it's a story more of loss. The loss associated with fighting desperately for something that you think you want, and then you watch so instead of watching each character in their ascension to the throne, it's more about watching each character and what they're losing along the way. Is that accurate? Is that something that I'm just projecting onto? Or is that an aspect of something?
Well, that's certainly part of it. I mean, I think there are a number of things that I'm trying to get into the books. You know, there's a certain metafictional aspect, if I may use that pretentious word, to writing any kind of thing. You're Tolkien and Robert E. Howard and all the great fantasists before. In some ways, this was almost my answer to them. A lot of it is about war. A great many of the epic fantasies from Lord of the Rings onward is about war, but to my mind, a lot of it doesn't really deal honestly with the consequences of war, what war does to us as a society, what war does to us as individuals, and the struggle for power in the same way. You know, what are we fighting for? And I love fantasy. I've grew up reading fantasy, but I wanted to put a somewhat different spin on it. The whole trope of absolute good versus absolute evil, which was wonderful in the hands of J.R. Tolkien, I think became kind of cliche and rote in the hands of the many Tolkien imitators who followed. I've always preferred writing about gray characters, human characters who, you know, whether they are giants or elves or dwarves or whatever they are, they're still human. The human heart in conflict with itself, as Faulkner says, that all of us have the capacity in us for great good and for great evil, for love, but also for hate. And I wanted to write that kind of complex characters in a fantasy, not just all the good people get together to fight the bad guy.
Well, speaking of amazing characters, I would like to talk a little bit about Tyrion.
Dwarves tipped you off. Speaking of elves,
I didn't want to say it, but I'm glad somebody...
unicorns, Tyrion. No unicorns. That's what I like about the show.
Tyrion seems to be almost unflappable. I mean, it seems like there's really only one character that gets to him, which it seems to be his father. Other than that, do you think that there's any other character that gets under his skin?
Arya.
Sorry, Lena was in the way.
No, definitely. It's not just his father. I mean, Shay gets under his skin quite a bit because he also happens to be falling in love with her. So those two go hand in hand, don't they? But I feel like only his father is the one that has more control over his destiny. So that poses more of a problem to Tyrion. The others he can easily manipulate.
Well, that's what I find, yeah, even with his sister, there's a certain level of control that she might get to him.
I am here.
Briefly. I'll lean this way. She might get to you sometime. She might get to both of us sometime, but most of the time we can just,
Yeah.
by the end of the scene, or by the end of your interaction with her, it seems like you're always winding up with the upper hand. Mm-hmm. Do you ever catch yourself in real life breaking down a situation the way that Tyrion might? It seems like mentally preparing for every potential move and guessing 10 steps ahead. It seems like an exhausting way to live, but
I guess as actors, you're lucky enough to have people do that for you, aren't you? What, airline, what? Just take me to the airport. Latte! So no. No. Yeah.
well, Lena, speaking of your,
That's American actors, though.
What?
I'm saying that's American actors. That's a different story.
I learned that quickly.
Did you ever ask for a latte and it arrived on set of Game of Thrones?
What the fuck is a fucking latte? What the fucking hell? Why is this card fighter? What the fuck is a Starbucks? Wow, I just lost the entire country of Northern Ireland. Welcome back, Mr. Dinklage. The greatest coffee in Belfast.
Lena, have you found, what have you found has been
always
the,
have to follow Pete.
Dale.
It's not fair.
Dan,
Thank you.
I'll skip Dan. Kit, I'm a big fan of your hair. Now, it's glorious,
Thank you.
and I'm wondering if has it always been glorious, or is there a certain product?
It was glorious. It's been glorious for a while, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had to. These two made me grow up for the show, so yeah, and it's now become a talking point in every interview.
I know, that's why I brought it
I
up.
don't know what you're supposed to say about it.
I wanted to wind you up. I wanted to, that is a part of creating that level of mayhem that I'm excited about. Nikolai also has wonderful hair. Sort of in that, like, Disney villain, like the prince you're rooting against. Like, he's super handsome, but
Oh, yes.
Lena.
Jealousy.
Yes, hello.
now we can go back to Lena. What has been the most emotionally difficult scene that you've had to play thus far?
I think it's not difficult because it's exciting and I love it. I love that, all the characters are super complex. But I think the stuff with Cersei and Tyrion is so deep and loaded that it's always fun to play that emotional side of them.
I met you a couple
I'm
of weeks ago
terrified.
in line at a bathroom
Yes, you did.
at a
tell
a
the story.
2-year-old's birthday party.
Yeah,
That's a bit true.
I do that weekend.
And I had to go to the bathroom very badly, but not as bad as Lena. That's irrelevant, but I thought I'd let you know. And I didn't recognize you at all, and I'm a huge fan of the show, and we were just speaking, and I realized after I left that I had no idea, and I had to text these guys to find out if you were covered in tattoos and had dark hair, and they said yes. And I was thinking like but does that physical transformation, the wig and the wardrobe, does that allow you, as an actor, does it help you to transform into Cersei? And almost like you're wearing a mask, does it liberate you in a way?
Well, not being blessed with glorious hair.
I'm more interested in the men's hair than I am the lady.
It's a massive part for me, getting the wig on and then getting locked into that costume, which doesn't allow for much comfort. And then kind of walking into the world that they create. It's a massive part for me of sort of becoming her and stepping into it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, in terms of like stepping in and stepping out, I was thinking about Catelyn and her. I mean, I was referring to a little bit loss earlier about how Catelyn, as a character, seems to have lost the most, or is about to lose the most. And I'm wondering are you able to leave that at work, or does that level of emotional distraught come with you home?
Oh, always. I'm a nervous wreck. I'm constantly crying. No, that's part of the enjoyment of playing her, is the challenge. It's exciting, as Lena says. You don't look at it as being difficult. You just, you want to, fulfill what you've been given on the script by David and Dan and Brian. So it's a delight to be given material like that, to get engrossed in it and get lost. And it is the costume, it is the hair, it is your fellow artists, the crew, everybody. And we are completely blessed with the people that we work with. And the crew is our directors, our HODs, everybody. It's the best job ever, and you're working with the best people. And so you're the last link in the chain, and you want to get in there and do it well. But we have a lot of fun off stage as well.
See, this is the difference between European actors and American actors. They're professionals. And they show up on time, and they do what they need to do, and we just bitch about it.
Oh, we do that too.
We show up late,
Totally.
Yeah. And they sound classier. Well,
I'm barely here. They sound smart, don't they?
no, they're so smart. Classy. Bullshit. All right. I guess I got to ask another one a question. Maisie, Arya is forced to grow up pretty fast in a pretty brutal world, and I would guess that playing such a vital role in a massive series, you might feel some pressure to do the same, or have you felt that pressure? And does that add an interesting dynamic to your performance, do you think?
Yeah, I kind of feel like I've had to grow up kind of quickly too. Doing things like this, I probably wouldn't have ever thought I'd be doing this if I hadn't done Game of Thrones and stuff. And yeah, I don't feel like I would have been able to do this if I hadn't started it all. So I can kind of relate to Arya in that kind of sense. And yeah, it kind of makes it easier to see what she's going through.
And as I understand it, this was your first acting gig?
Yeah, it was my second audition for anything too.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Sophie, Sansa seems to make decisions from a very emotional place, which is which is very dangerous in this world. And do you think as she matures that she'll sway away from this, or is it just an integral part of who she is?
Yeah, well, Sansa kind of started out very innocent, very naive, and she made decisions pretty much from the heart, which was pretty stupid. But I mean, I understood them as a 13-year-old being thrust into that situation. I feel like you would make the same decisions, so I related to her on that kind of ground. But I think as the seasons have gone by, watching people like Tyrion and Littlefinger and Cersei, she's kind of learning the game now, and she's learning to not trust people so much like her father did, and that kind of didn't end too well. So she's learned a lot, and she's grown up, and she's beginning to make decisions with her head, which is very good.
Yeah, I think it's always a mistake when people are thinking or talking about actors or performances by actors who are young, don't want to call them child actors, but younger actors, to maybe just relegate them to being cute or fun. And I think that some of the young actors, especially the ladies on the stage, give performances that are as riveting and moving as anything that's on television. Now, I guess we got to get to the Kingslayer at some point.
Okay.
Nikolai, Jamie mentions that he is one of the few men in Westeros that stayed faithful to one woman.
Yeah.
That woman happens to be his sister.
What's wrong with that?
But nevertheless, I suppose that redeems him in some very twisted way. She has obviously not returned the favor of being faithful.
He doesn't know that.
But I'm wondering, do you believe that they are truly in love, and that if given the chance, that they could make it work?
Well, I think that I really believe that he loves her, and he would want to be with her, and he's kind of given up everything. He's dedicated his life to this woman in many ways. She might not feel the same about him, who knows, but I think that would be the dream. The second part of your question, would that ever happen? What was that?
Well, do you believe that if they had a chance that they could make it work? If they had a chance together to stay together and...
I think it's a little complicated.
Have you seen the show? The whole thing is complicated. I can't follow half the damn stories.
I think he knows that it's very tricky. I mean, they were very young when they started. I don't think like with Sansa, he didn't really think it through. They just started having sex, and it was great. And then she got married, and but he loves her. I really believe he loves her, right? You don't think she loves him? Come on, just talk.
I have a kind of strange take on it.
You have a strange take?
I think she would like to be him.
George, can we make that happen? Somehow?
Well, there is magic in the world, so
Don't.
That's interesting.
Kit, can you talk a little bit about shooting in Iceland? It's beautiful, but it looks like a really difficult place to shoot.
Yeah. No.
Are you miserable?
No, it's. I think the first thing is that it is stunningly beautiful. Like, I get, we're doing the carpet on the way, and everyone's like, are you jealous of the people who shoot in Croatia or Morocco? And I genuinely wouldn't give up Iceland for either of those places, even though it's, minus 35, and some days we had trouble filming because you couldn't see that far in front of your face. But it's a wonderful place to work because it gives I can't think of anywhere else that gives that landscape beyond the wall more accurately. It's more like what I imagined in my head than Iceland. So, no, it's wonderful. I've kind of fallen in love with that country.
But does it add a certain level of difficulty to some of the shooting, just in terms of just the technicality of having to fight in that weather? And
yeah, no, it's kind of like, I always think it's like guerrilla filmmaking a bit. It's like you have to set up so quickly because you have so little daylight, and you have to work at such a rapid pace because you've got so little time to shoot everything. That it's not exactly made for film work, Iceland, but when you get what I think is some of the most beautiful scenery in the show, it's incredible. But yeah, the physicality of it as well, like I think the hardest thing I've ever done on this show was doing the fight with Corin Harfand at the end of season 2, because we choreographed this fight that was quite sort of, that flowed and was quite eloquent, and then we got out to location and the snow was, came up to about there. And if you ever tried running through snow or sand, it's very difficult. So doing a fight scene in that kind of conditions was really tough and kind of quite emotionally draining in some ways. So I really loved that scene, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to film.
And David and Dan, can you talk a little bit about the difficulties in shooting? Just a little bit about the process of how you have 3 units working in unison.
One thing I would just add to what Kit said, he's being modest, but he's very, very good at the stunt work. And the reason we're able to shoot that fight with Corin Halfhand in 5 hours of daylight, which is what we had that day, was because Kit knew the fight so well. And we're very lucky that Kit and Nikolai both actually, the sword fight with Jamie and Ned Stark in season 1, which is still one of my favorite fights in the show, and Nikolai just picks that stuff up so fast. And then I don't know if you remember this, but he jumped on the horse and galloped off.
Yeah, I do remember.
And the horse almost got decapitated by the signpost sticking out of the wall. And he did this kind of incredible duck at the last second. Otherwise, that beautiful face would have been squashed. And it was so good, and it stayed in the show because it just looked good. It looked like a real guy ducking. But sorry, what was your question?
A real guy.
Let's talk about how beautiful he is.
A real guy.
Some more. I feel like that's what the whole panel's been about so far. Kit and Nikolai and how beautiful they are. No, just about the 3 units that you guys.
We've got 2 geniuses sitting over there in the 3rd row or something, Bernie Caulfield and Chris Newman, who are kind of... They're kind of the real producers. We're kind of not. We're kind of the writers who say, wouldn't it be cool if we could do this? And then they're actually the ones who have to do it all and actually produce things. And the schedule, Chris's office is right down the hall from ours. And so every night when we're leaving the office in pre-production, we walk by this massive wall board with a schedule. It's a giant kind of flow chart schedule. And it's got the 3 units in all the different locations. This past year, we shot in 5 different countries, and it's the most terrifying thing.
I don't look at it.
Yeah, you don't want to look at it. It just seems impossible. And every time something bad happens, if we lose a day because of weather, if an actor gets injured, if anything else happens, the schedule has to change. And it's like this. It's the most challenging Tetris puzzle, and somehow Chris has it all in his brain. But we don't know how.
We make him wear a helmet. God forbid, gets a knock to the head.
So, but you guys directed an episode this upcoming season.
Yes, 3rd.
Okay, and so how many countries did you?
We shot in all of them. Yeah, we had a couple days in Morocco, a day in Croatia, and a day in Iceland, and the usual Belfast stuff.
Wow. So you'll have, and you cross-board how many at a time then?
How many episodes?
Yes.
The whole season.
So the entire season is
season
cross-board.
3, the first scene we shot was from the 10th and final episode. So the entire season is cross-boarded. We have 2 units shooting virtually every day. Not first and second unit, but 2 first units with directors, 2 different episodes shooting every day. And for a couple of weeks last season, we had 3 units shooting every day. 3 directors from 3 episodes, often in 2 different countries.
I believe in the first season there were a couple days where we had 4 units.
I think we might have, yeah.
I remember asking where something was, and somebody said that he's with D unit. What's D unit? Where is D unit? It was not even aware we had one until I found out they were shooting something.
Well, among critical praise for Game of Thrones, Newsday called it the best show on television, while the Los Angeles Times termed the series a cinematic feast and masterful.
And the New York Times called it a piece of shit.
What do they know?
They didn't quite say that. What they actually said is that no woman would ever want to watch it. That's why we have an entirely male audience.
Not true.
I didn't actually read it. I made Dan read it. That's what he told me.
That was my summary. I do coverage on reviews.
Well, we have a couple of questions from Twitter, from the Twitterverse, and I wanted to ask some of these. This comes from Gina Wolf at WolfG. Who is the funniest on set? I'm looking at you.
Conleth Hill, our Varys. The man, to do a scene with him is nearly impossible without just peeing your pants. Not from laughing, but just peeing your pants. He has this thing he does where you can just pee your pants. No, yeah, definitely Conleth. And I barely have any scenes with him, so it's so easy.
I would say Gwendolyn Christie is also a very, very funny person.
Gwendolyn Christie.
Brienne.
Yeah.
But I think I went 4 months, season 1, without ever seeing Sean Bean smile. And then one day on set in Malta, I look over and I hear laughter, and it's just kind of strange. I'd never heard this particularly. I look over and there's Sean Bean laughing, and that was odd. And then he's really laughing, and it was all Conleth. Conleth was just cracking him up, and I'd never seen anyone do that before. Yeah, Conleth is.
I think Conleth gets a real kick about making you laugh. It's a real game. Yeah. I often stare at a vase when I'm in the
I stare at his forehead.
It's a character choice, because I can't look at you.
Yeah. And he never cracks. You can do anything, and he won't.
No,
I remember there was one scene, Peter, where
Well, that's because you guys aren't funny. He's the funny one.
Exactly.
there was a scene where he had Peter, he was cracking Peter up just with the way he said "a shy," and he was saying "a shy." And you couldn't do your takes because of the way he was saying it.
What's that name? By Archibald Shamalatish or whatever that book was, that scene. God.
The mud game.
Shamalama ding dong.
Do you find people think you're British in real life?
No fucking way. I'm from Jersey, man. No way. No.
I thought there was something else coming, but he's done. All right, we're moving on.
No.
This is a question from Shauna, at Shauna, a.k.a.
Shana.
Oh, you know what? This could be a good question for Sophie. Are the dire wolves real wolves?
Yes, the direwolves in season 1 were real, because I took mine home. Thank you, George. Please. Yeah, the direwolves are real, and mine was probably the worst trained dog on set. But the rest of them were really good. I mean, the trainers were fantastic. And then I think in season 2 they just enhanced them, or was it total CGI?
They're wolves. We shoot them as they're real wolves, trained wolves that are shot here as visual effects elements, and then scaled up by about 50%, which I think is about the maximum you can realistically scale an animal up without it starting to look fake, because we got them to the point where they're supposed to be the size of, like, maybe almost the size of a small pony, and we looked into doing CG at the time. It just seemed like it was going to be prohibitively expensive to do it that way, so we do them real wolves shot separately and then inserted with visual effects into the.
And those are real dragons too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those we breed.
This is a question for everybody. If you weren't playing your character, who would you like to play, male or female, and why? Maybe we'll start with Nikolai.
Oh, that's a good question. I would like to play.
It's totally creepy.
We're skipping you. Maisie. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know. Tyrion Lannister. Yeah. Not because I think I could do it better, but
Wait a minute. Wait.
that's true. No, it's a fantastic character. That's why. Okay, just keep the quiet. It's not uncomfortable at all.
That's why it's a new reality show. Who can play Tyrion?
Michelle?
Oh, me? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I think I would love to go back in time and play Arya, actually. Yeah, I would. I'd love that character. I think she's amazing. And hands down to Maisie. And she's an amazing character, and her strength and her vulnerability is incredibly appealing. And just her braveness. Yeah.
I think this is probably because of the way Jerome Flynn plays him, but I love Bronn. He's got the best one-liners out of everyone. And he's just I find him a brilliant character in the books, the one that George, the character George wrote, but also the way Jerome plays him, I think, is amazing.
Benioff, we're not skipping you, bro.
Oh, Khal Drogo, definitely.
Now, you recently told me a story about
Christ.
you had a run-in.
Yeah.
He's strong.
He is. He's not just Hollywood. It's not just, look strong. That's real strength, which I found out, unfortunately, to my dismay. We brought him back in season 2 for one scene, and so mostly just so we could hang out with him in Belfast because we love Momoa. And so after his scene with Amelia, we all went out for dinner, Dan and Amelia and Jason and I, and he was talking about working out, doing his Conan workout or something. And I have been drinking quite a bit. It's like that story about the mouse in the bar room who starts drinking the beer tap's open, he starts lapping up the beer puddle and says, "Now where's that damn cat?" So I was the drunk mouse, and I said, "Momoa, you ever play Mercy, the game Mercy?"
Oh, God.
Yeah. And he said, "Yeah." And I just, for whatever reason, I had in my head that I really thought I was going to win. And I didn't. And I was so drunk and stubborn that I refused to say Mercy, even though he was destroying me, until Amelia started, screaming.
Why after that you decided to then play the slap game?
And then I played the slap.
That was the mystifying move to me.
Also didn't win.
Seemed like possibly more damaging than in terms of sheer tendon damage.
And 2 days later, the next day, my hands were pretty swollen, but, I thought it'll go down, I'll keep icing them. And the day after that, they were even more swollen. And then I flew back to LA, we were done, and I flew back, and I come home to try to hug my wife, but I can't really touch her. And she looked at me and she said, "We're going to Cedars-Sinai right now." And yeah, he'd squished my hand. That's what the doctor, in the emergency room, the doctor actually said, "Your hand was squished."
Dan?
Matthew Weiner would never do that, right?
Too smart. He's too smart for that. Too smart for that.
I've arm wrestled him.
Right.
Who won?
And he beat the shit out of me. He's tougher than you think.
He was a wrestler.
He was a wrestler, yeah. Dan?
Who would I play? I would save the show by absolutely refusing to play any character whatsoever. There's nothing, no good could come of that. I promise you.
All right, thanks for playing the game. Moving on. Mr. Dinklage.
Probably Don Draper. Oh, shit, wrong show. Well, if Mr. Benioff is playing Khal Drogo, I'll play Daenerys Targaryen. Picture it.
Oh, yeah? It's hard.
Amelia's gonna watch that with the like just dead face.
Lena?
I wouldn't give Cersei up.
Oh,
I wouldn't.
come on.
Fucking love it. George.
George, what do you think?
Well, I do play all the characters, of course. When I write them, all of them. One after another. But if they actually had to film me, I guess the only one that I could play would be Samuel Tarly. Or maybe Hot Pie. Hot Pie. I met him last night. He's great.
Amazing.
I really like Arya, but it'd be kind of cool to wear nice clothes and have nice hair and stuff. So I think Daenerys kind of captures a lot of that and still gets to have fun, ride horses and stuff. So, and have the nice hair and clothes. So yeah, Daenerys.
I guess it's me now. I would love to play Joffrey. Because you can only be beat up so often. You want to beat someone else up. So yeah, I guess that would be pretty fun. Yeah.
Well, George, just speaking to your process a little bit, as you're writing now, do you hear the actors' voices, or do you still continue to hear the voices of the characters that you originally imagined?
I don't. I still hear, I started writing this in 1991, so I think it was like 2007 when I met Dan and David, so I had a 16-year head start on living with these characters, and they got pretty hardwired into my brain. So as great as our cast is, when I'm alone with the computer, it's still the characters that I've been with since 1991 that I see and hear.
And do you, obviously we all become emotionally invested in the characters, which makes it that much more difficult when we see them melted with molten gold, or their heads removed from their bodies, or being unseen from the nape to the chops. I'm wondering if you develop an emotional rapport with the characters, and does that, especially seeing them as being portrayed and brought to life, does that affect your writing, or the plans that you may have for them?
Well, I think it had the potential to do that, which I don't necessarily know would be a good thing. But fortunately, I am so far ahead of the series. Like last night at the party, I found myself at one point talking to three very nice actors who were very pleasant, and I was having a great time talking with them and drinking with them. And then I suddenly realized that I had killed all three of them at various points in the series, and that these would all shortly be unemployed actors. But, and I had a moment of horrible guilt. But, it's already done. But. And it was particularly sad when one of them said, "Please don't kill my character," and she's already dead. But so it's probably just as well that I don't know these people when we're actually doing it, because when I meet the actors and the actresses, and they're such tremendously nice people, and it's then hard to kill them. David and Dan don't seem to have this problem though, because I've noticed, as bloodthirsty as I am in killing all of these characters, David and Dan are killing some characters who are still alive in the books. So their body count is actually ahead of mine. When they say no one is safe in the series, that's literally true. There are characters who are in book 5 and who are going to be in book 6 who are dead on the TV show.
Yeah, so what's that process like when you guys decide to change what Mr. Martin has written?
Dan?
We need to make room. I mean, it's a huge cast, and sometimes you just need to clear some people out of the way. Yeah, it's like a culling. A purge. Culling, like when there are too many deer in the forest. No, I think that we obviously would love George's books more than in many ways, any books we've ever read. Otherwise, we wouldn't have devoted every waking and most sleeping moments of our lives to them. And in the process of adapting the show, however, is complex as the show is allowed to be, compared to a feature film or a normal television show. It's still 10 hours seems like a lot, but when you have a world like the world George has built, you start to realize how quickly that story real estate gets taken up. And there have been places where we did just have to kind of clear out space to make room for all these guys who we love so much and we were so invested in, to do them justice. Because if there are too many balls in the air, at a certain point, I think there's an audience can really keep in their head at once and remain invested with at once. So it really is. It's kind of a juggling act to get right up to that line of like maximum complexity, but not go over it and start to lose people.
And do you guys find that you're generally on the same page?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes our hands are tied. Sometimes an actor will say, I'm an actor that we don't actually have a long-term contract with will say, I can only give you, 2 days in July and maybe a couple days in October because I'm doing these movies. And we say, well, great. Well, yeah, great. So give us a couple days in July, and then they get there and we kill them, and that makes it easier.
We never liked you anyway.
It happened.
And do you bring that to George, or George, do you trust them?
I trust them. I do. And I know it's a useful tool to keep the actors from like asking for raises. And, so I've been on the other side of it. Sure. In a perfect world, I would like more hours each year. I would like more money. So each episode had the budget of a Peter Jackson film. But I don't think this is very likely. And given the realities of the production, it's incredible that what they do.
Well, that actually brings me to my next question. Taking into account that you guys are, I believe, arbiters of quality programming, and it leads me to a question I'm sure everybody here is thinking. Despite all of the critical and popular success, why is it that you believe that my show has never been nominated for an Emmy?
Well,
And if anybody else wants to jump in, I'm all ears because I'm confused at this point. It seems aggressive.
you don't have any swords.
No swords.
We've got very few dragons. I just feel like you're missing some elements.
I think it's the wire of comedy. I honestly don't get it. You know this because
You don't get the show. You don't get my
No.
It makes no sense.
Yeah,
Now I'm.
I've watched every episode of
Yeah.
the damn show. I don't get why it's not nominated for awards. It is. It's mind-boggling. And just Rob was very nice when Kit was injured last year and was recuperating for 9 months or something. Was it? How long were you?
I'm still recuperating.
And was bedridden for a while, and we sent you several seasons. Rob sent you all these seasons.
The entire box.
Yes. I mean, we're obsessed with it. I think it's. I don't think I've watched more hours of any show or more half hours, maybe except for.
It was just a joke, Benioff. I don't really want to know the answer. It's not about. They didn't come here to see me. Let's take another. I appreciate
It's a
that. Thank you.
crime. It's a crime.
It is a crime.
Yeah.
By the way, if I wasn't clear about that, it's a fucking crime. All right, moving on. This is again from the Twitterverse. If you weren't, who would you like to see on the Iron Throne, and why? Question for everyone. We'll start at the other.
I'd probably like to see myself. Rob probably on the Iron Throne because he has the right intentions, but also, he's very good at the politics. I think him and Catelyn, but they have a good heart and they'd be ruling for good and for the right reasons. Whereas, I mean, it's arguable the others are doing it for the dosh. So yeah, definitely Rob. Plus, he's really nice, and he's my brother, so I'm a little biased.
Yeah, it'd be cool to see a Stark on the throne. I don't know who, but I think they kind of... Arya's just trying to get home. She never really... But yeah, I think they're loyal, and it kind of turns out that if you're loyal, you kind of die. So it'd be cool if maybe, yeah, Stark got to the throne in the end, but you know, so...
I know who's going to be on the throne at the end, so I better not say. But there'll be a few people sitting on it before the end, so.
Oh, hello.
You just gave me the look of death, George. I'm a little scared. I put Tyrion on it because I think Westeros would be wicked.
Yeah.
Well, first I'd bring in a design team to get rid of the swords. I'd get some plush pillows and just make it a bit softer, because anybody sitting on that will inherently be aggressive because they're being poked in the ass by all the knives. If you sit on I don't know how Jack does it. Every time I sit on it,
He knows where to sit now.
he knows where to sit. I don't know where to sit. I think Tyrion would be okay with it. George?
Yes. I hear.
George has told us the answer.
All right.
Really?
I'll go with Tyrion.
Why?
I genuinely think he's the only person who talks sense in the entire thing. Everyone else talks nonsense, and Tyrion talks sense. Yeah.
So, everybody talks nonsense.
What about
Very
Bronn?
eloquently
What about
and
Bronn?
really well.
You said Bronn.
Michelle?
Oh, well, I would have said Tyrion as well, but too many people have already said that. So, I think I agree with Sophie and pick Rob, actually. Yeah. Because in some selfish way, my ass would be on that throne too. So, there you go. Yeah.
That's good. I think, I don't think that monarchy really works for Westeros. I think they should just get rid of all those wannabe kings.
Oh, please.
But Tyrion would do that, wouldn't you?
You know, I was never picked for the dodgeball team. This feels great. But I think he'd blow it within a week. You know, something would happen. Oh, behave. Yeah.
Nice.
Right?
You see, you got it.
Right on.
All right.
There we go.
There we go.
This is another question from the Twitterverse for everybody. Tell us your best fan encounter.
I was sat, we went to a restaurant and we just sat at the bar waiting for our table. And I ordered a drink and the guy was like, "Oh, hey!" I was like, "Hi." And then he went really shy and picked up a box and walked away. And, well, it might have just been kind of weird, but I think he might have recognized me and thought he knew me. But yeah, like, now I say it out loud, maybe he was just a bit weird.
Sophie?
I got a
Anybody?
weird fan mail once.
Riveting.
Yeah.
Just the once.
Just the once. This girl had dressed up in like period costume. She'd obviously sort of made herself. It was quite good. But she'd done like a photo shoot with her friend, like But she just blacked out her friend's face. Like, don't look at her. Don't look at her. Look at me. Don't look at her. Like 5 photos with her friend's face blacked out. Pissing myself.
I got some fan mail recently. It was a photograph, and it must have been, from judging by the fashion and the sort of, look of the picture, it was from 1970. And in the picture, it was a group of elderly men, all holding harmonicas. And in the middle, and one has like a sailor cap, and there's the manager on the side in a tuxedo, Ricardo Montalban, white tuxedo. And in the middle, there's a gentleman who shares my condition. He is a dwarf, and he's just sitting there smiling without a harmonica, but with like AstroTurf pants. And a big, like a dandy ascot. And he's... And I'm like, well, that's an interesting picture. And then I read the attached letter, and it's typed. So that's a little creepy, but... and it says, my father was a photographer, and I was going through his old photographs, and I came across this one. So I thought I would send it, and realized it could be in the center, it could be no one else but the Game of Thrones Peter Dinklage. So if you do the math, I'm either immortal or, which some of us are, or I was 1 when this picture was taken. So so my point is, I guess, all the advances my people have been through, the show helping, you'll still get a photograph in the mail thinking you were part of a harmonica band in 1970. I framed it and put it in my bathroom. So every time I'm taking a pee, boys. All different, like big harmonicas, little ones.
Lena, would you like to follow that?
I don't want to follow that. I really don't.
Okay. You guys have, Dan and David, you've talked about season 3 as the season that you were most excited about. Can you tell us why?
Well, I think that we fell in love with George's books. We fell in love with there's so many devastatingly great set pieces and scenes in George's books, and there was such across the series, of course, but I would say that the predominance of the scenes that really just made us say, holy shit, and we knew would make other people say, holy shit, if they saw them properly done on television. More came from the 3rd book, which actually will span over the 3rd and 4th seasons, it turns out, but season 3 was really the one that we focused on, is like, this is the place we need to get.
Yeah, the longer you work in this business, you start to be more able to see the carpentry. You can see the seams, you can see where things are going, and it's harder to surprise you, I guess, as a reader. And there are a few scenes in Storm of Swords that are so devastating that I didn't see them coming. And when I went back and reread them, the clues are there. It's not the random surprise where you couldn't see it coming because no one could have seen the lawyer walking into the empty elevator shaft because that Ellie Law reference there. They're beautifully set up, but somehow George hid them from you, and so that's what we're trying to emulate with season 3, and God knows if we've succeeded, but that was the book we've always prayed we'd get to.
And where is the order at this point from HBO? I mean, obviously there's enough material to make the show for the next decade.
Yeah, I mean,
that the
officially,
plan?
we don't have, there's no order. We're still waiting for green light on season 4.
The executives are here. They're here tonight. They're sitting somewhere out there. And right now they're sweating. Because we talked about that riot thing earlier. I'm just putting it out there. I won't be responsible for what happens. This is from at Freya300. What are the most difficult scenes to shoot, technically, from a technical standpoint, CGI, etc.?
Oh, for us?
Yes.
Well, anything with the dragons is tricky because they're not there. You know, I think, but last year the Blackwater episode, not a scene in particular, but the whole episode, that was a monster. Partly because it was one giant battle, and partly it was all shot at night, and nights in Belfast, as Peter well knows, because he was standing out there in the mud, they're not pleasant, you know. So it was tough on the crew, tough on the cast, tough on everybody. But Neil Marshall did an insane job, and the great thing about Neil was Neil Marshall, who directed that episode. Neil came on a week before we started. I think he had 1 week of prep because there was a personal emergency, and so a director fell out, and we were in crisis mode looking for a director. Dan and I are both fans of his movie, The Descent, and literally Bernie called him and said, Neil, you know, we want you to come do this for us. It starts shooting in, I think it was 9 days, 8 days. Bernie's out there somewhere. Could we get you to come to us on Monday? This was a Friday. Could you come over on Monday? And there's kind of a pause. He says, oh, you know, okay, so Monday afternoon. Kind of need you to come Monday. There's a 5:45 flight, gets into Belfast. And he came, and the incredible thing about Neil is everyone else was a little bit panicked about this episode because it was so big, and we were trying to cut things out and figure out how we could possibly shoot everything in the time we had. And Neil kept saying, well, what if we added this shot of a guy's head? What if a giant rock fell from the top of the wall and this guy's skull just exploded everywhere? And we thought, oh, that sounds great, but you're not going to have time today. He said, no, I think we can do it. And he just kept adding beats and beats and beats, and he was a monster. He was our hero. So that whole episode, Blackwater, that was the biggest challenge.
Yeah. I can imagine it. And how much of that on set was green screen for you guys as actors? A fair amount, I guess.
Nothing. I mean, that's.
I guessed
that's,
incorrectly.
I mean, obviously, the explosion and the reaction to all of that is you gotta fake. I mean, not fake. You know, just you're going like this, and there's just a grip going with the light. Yeah.
So
but
you're
everything
complaining
else.
about acting.
What?
You're complaining about acting. See, this is the American thing. He called it, we had to fake it. You know, we had to fake seeing the explosion.
Oh, it's weird.
We had to act.
I was like, where's the explosion? Not there. But no, it was great. I mean, one of the many great things I love about this show is it really working in those environments. You know, that breath that you see coming out of our mouths it's really that cold, and you know, Kit can speak more of that stuff. You know, it really adds to being in the moment because it's yeah. And when it finally stops raining, the guy with the hose goes, "Sorry, guys." And you're like, "Oh God, right? You have to match it." So that's almost a cruel joke. You're like, "Oh, finally, fuck." But thankfully, it rains a lot in Belfast. So. Wow, I'm shitting on Belfast. I so don't want to. It's the greatest place in the world. Truly.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
It's not.
We should shoot this in Burbank.
Maisie, can you talk a little bit about a little bit of the training that you had to do for the swordsmanship?
Before I started acting and stuff, I always enjoyed dancing and things, and it's described in the books and the series as a water dance. So before we started everything, I kind of thought maybe my dance background would help with it, and it did. So it was kind of like a dance, but you got a stick in your hand. Yeah, and I picked it up quite quickly, and I really enjoyed it, and it was lovely working with the stunt guys, and they were always made sure you're okay, and anything you were struggling with, they'd change or, show you how to do it easier. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and then after kind of learning the routine or whatever, it was kind of just then making it look like you were really trying to hit their head instead of meeting the sword or things like that, and putting more effort into different parts, and yeah, kind of like acting it, I guess. But yeah, I don't know, people always say like, are you a good sword fighter? But I don't know if I'd stand much of a chance against, I mean, I put up a good fight, but I don't know if, I can actually sort of like combat fight, because it's kind of just routines and stuff. But yeah, I'll try.
Will we find out?
The incredible thing about Maisie is that they were teaching her the stunt routine, and she said, well, I've got to learn how to do it left-handed. And they said, why? And she said, because Arya's left-handed in the books. So she went and...
When I didn't know much about it all, I was looking on the internet, and people were getting funny about Cass not having the right hair color or this or that. And then Mum had told me after reading the books that Arya was left-handed. And I thought because I hadn't done sword fighting before, if you just learn it in the other hand, then maybe be easier. No. Yeah. But yeah, it was good. And yeah, I'm still doing it, so.
And Kit, what was the training like for you? How intensive was it?
It's quite intensive. I mean, I really love the fight stuff. It's some of my favourite stuff to do. So it's quite enjoyable actually. I mean, it's like for your job, you get to kind of go and fight with swords. It's not exactly hard. It's kind of, I don't know. It is. But I don't know. You have to put. Yeah, we've got great stunt guys on this show who care a lot about your safety, and also are very good at teaching you how to, make it look like you really know how to hold a sword. So we do a bit of training when we can, I guess.
Just a bit.
Yeah, just a bit. When we put in the time after hours. Like in Iceland, we'd come home from filming and we'd practice the sword fight every evening until we got it right, and you just keep doing that.
How long are your days, generally?
In Belfast, they can be very long. You go until you finish, really. But in Iceland, you've only got a short amount of time, daylight. So you work from, it gets light at, you get onto set about 8, and then it gets light at 10, and then it gets dark at 4. And then you go home and you have a few drinks and learn how to sword fight.
It's like live entertainment.
Really well.
You get to kick back and with a beer and watch Kit get hit with a stick.
Actually did do that.
And Nikolai, do you have a similar experience with that? I mean, it seems like you guys are pretty good with swords. It's hard to believe that you're just getting drunk and learning after work.
I know. It is hard to believe. No, it's the stunt guys. They're just brilliant, really. I mean, it's like learning a dance. And that's what you do. So, yeah.
Another question from the Twitterverse. Who reads the books? I know you guys have answered this a lot, but I think it's really interesting to people just in terms of knowing how the story is unfolding, where your character is headed. How many of you guys actually read the books? Sophie, do you read the book?
I read the books season by season, but my chapters, sorry guys. Because, well, A, the books are really complicated. I can only just about manage the TV series. They're amazing, but complicated, George. So I just kind of know my storyline, but I don't want to, think my storyline is going off in one direction, and then because it's just an adaptation, goes off in a completely different one. So season by season, only my chapters, so it's like, not too many pages either. It's fab.
My mum and stepdad have both read the books, and they've told me roughly what happens to Arya. Not every single encounter along the way, because I know that things changed. Like, I didn't meet Tywin really in the books, and then that kind of came up in the scripts, which was great. And then things like Weasel Soup didn't happen. But yeah, I guess I know roughly what happens to her, so then you just wait till the scripts come and then see what you're actually going to be doing. And then when all this finishes, I do really want to read them, but I'm kind of confused a bit at the moment, so yeah. But I do really want to read them, so.
I've read them.
This is awkward because I'm sitting next to George, but I haven't read them. I speak to a lot of people about them because seemingly a lot of people have. And it's interesting to get different takes on characters. And then, of course, we have the words from David and Dan. So I let it unfold. I kind of like to be surprised. But I'm scared I'm now going to die.
Yeah. Well, time to kill another Lannister. With all apologies to George, and just in such, I'm so in awe of this man, but I don't want to know what happens to me down the road. I'm terrified, and I don't want to play any sort of ending when I'm doing this show. And I just live and breathe this show, and I'm so embarrassed when you fucker.
Yeah.
Why'd you have to? Do you know how often we get asked this question?
Yeah.
And I go, hold on, what? Then I just say, walk away.
The people want to know.
It's
That's
funny
the gig.
too, though,
I'm also
'cause-
going to ask who you're dating at some point.
Yeah. I also, I can't subtract the show from the book, so I'm that guy who has a really hard time reading the book after he sees the movie, because I'll just picture Stephen Dorff,
Okay.
Sorry.
If you could let me know what movie Stephen Dorff did that was based on a book. I'm just interested in why you thought of Stephen Dorff.
It's just the first actor that came to my head. And he comes to my head all the time.
Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. Oh,
Now we're getting somewhere.
I just would picture my friends on the show, and I'm going to read them after my character now gets killed.
Yes, I've read the first 4, not the latest one.
All right.
I couldn't help myself when I got the part, it's based on books. I read them very quickly, actually, because I just wanted to know what happened to my character, and I then got way too ahead of myself and had to reel it back in. So I have read them, yeah.
Yeah, I read per season. Yeah. And I must admit, I did take a leaf out of Sophie's book as well. Like, look for the title of your character. Yeah. And then, of course, fill in the dots in between.
Well, like with Maisie, my mum read the book. And she did a really good summary, so.
Dan and David, can you talk a little bit about which characters that you found the most
I'm going
challenging?
to die.
Suddenly I'm sweating.
You know. Flick the chair.
Which characters did you find the most challenging to cast, and why?
Arya.
Yeah, Arya. I would say we probably saw more people for Arya and Daenerys than any other characters. I mean, we must have seen, how many? We must have seen 300 Aryas. And this one was, she was one of the very, we were kind of, there just nobody was right. There were a couple of kids who felt very actory, who felt like they just, they'd kind of gone through that child actor processing machine that churns out some talented people, but they're good for kind of what child actors are usually cast as, which is roles. They're not as adult as this, and just nobody had that realness we were looking for. And one of the very last faces we saw was Maisie's face on the Cast It is the name of the program that you cast with. In the window, it's a little window this big. We just saw that face this big. We were like, please be good.
Yeah, we were on a location scout in Morocco, and we were at the hotel and had very, very dodgy internet connection. And so you click on the link for Maisie's audition. You're waiting.
You're watching like the little line.
And we're just seeing this tiny little thumbnail picture of a face that looked so perfect, and waiting and waiting and waiting, and then it was perfect.
It was literally 10 seconds into the audition. We were like, yep,
she's the one. And then we had a chemistry read actually with those two. Maisie and Sophie got together, and it was love at first sight.
Is that where you guys met? Because I read a lot about you guys being really great friends. You met at the audition?
Yeah, I did my first audition that I guess you watched, and then I did another audition meeting other girls who were playing Sansa. And I got on really, really well with Sophie, and just remember her being like super tall and like after everything we do, she's like, "Oh, you're really cute." And then I was a bit like, "Yeah, I'm only 1 year younger than you." But yeah, we got on really, really well, and I came out of the audition and said to my mum, I was like, "Even if I don't get the part, I really want that girl to, because she's really cool." So yeah.
Oh, you're really cute.
Still only 1 year younger than you.
Anybody else have an interesting casting story?
Well, Jason Momoa came in, and of his own free will, after doing his audition, he did the haka? The Maori war dance, which was not written into the scene. It actually didn't have anything to do with the scene, but I would say it impressed us. He did the hell out of it. He really did. So that was, and that was another really hard role to cast back in the day was Khal Drogo, surprisingly.
And you had Peter in mind.
Yeah, Peter, actually, before I think even the deal was done with HBO, I sent you an email. I'd met Peter before at a dinner or something or other, and he ignored me. Talked to my wife the whole night. But I remember thinking he's really smart. He's very funny, as you've seen tonight. And when we thought we might have a shot to do this, but before we actually had the deal, because the deal took a long time to make, sent him a note, and you'd already heard about the books and the character, I think. And then we met, and do you remember what you said?
He had one demand.
He had one demand.
No.
Yeah.
Said no beards.
No beards.
No long beard. Just done. Just done with the long beards.
I just never understood why in fantasy dwarves always have beard. No offense to Mr. Tolkien. But, and, you know, I think I had just done the Narnia movie a couple of years before we met. And,
So we had to rewrite the whole script. Right?
yeah.
And yet you wear a beard tonight.
It's not down to my knees.
Some of
This is the Hollywood beard.
The fact that the books existed before we began to cast a show, and it had so many fans, led to a phenomenon that a show that was not based on books would not have. That is, the minute the show was announced, I began to get tapes, pictures, links to YouTube performances of the major characters by would-be actors from literally all over the world. And of course, I'm in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I was weighing in on some of the casted auditions, but I wasn't in the casting session. I just sent all this stuff onto Dan and David. Here's another one that showed up on YouTube. Some of them weren't half bad, but some of them were frighteningly bad. And frighteningly inappropriate, according to the characters as described in the books. But you know, I mean, it's sincere. I don't want to, you know, ridicule it too much. I know there are people out there with dreams and all that, but it's really not the way. You can't get cast in a major television show by putting it up on YouTube and asking the fans to campaign for you, or by sending off the fact that you were in a school play and here's a picture of your performance as Othello or something like that.
Well, we're running low on time, but I wanted to ask something that I'm sure everybody here really is wondering. Where are you in the series? How close are you?
Well, I'm writing book 6, The Winds of Winter, and of course I'm starting to worry because everybody's asking me, what are you going to do if David and Dan and the show catches up to you, which is beginning to scare me. I didn't think it was a problem before, but they're moving faster than I am. I have not failed to notice this. I feel sometimes as if I'm laying track for a railroad, and I can hear the locomotive coming up behind me. And it's building speed, and I see the smoke, and I hear the whistle coming, and I better keep laying that track pretty fast here, because I'll get squashed if the locomotive comes. But I still have a considerable lead, at least that's what I'm telling myself. Season 3 is only the first half of book 3, so season 4 will be the second half of book 3, and then I have book 4 and book 5. Those are gigantic books which have to be recombined because they're actually parallel. But I'm hoping those will be at least 2 seasons, maybe 3. That will get me some time to finish book 6, and by the time they're up, they'll be doing that season, and I'll be writing book 7. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, on that note, that's going to conclude our evening, so let's give it up one more time to all the panelists. Check out Game of Thrones.